As it pleases you, Mr. Speaker, I rise this evening to make my presentation in relation to the motion for the approval of estimates to the tune of $220 billion for financial year, which stands in the name of the Honorable Member, Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh. Prior to me discussing my presentation, Mr. Speaker, kindly permit me to express my appreciation to the Honorable Member, Minister of Finance, and his support team who worked tirelessly in the preparation of Budget 2014 under the theme, A Better Guyana for All Guyanese, a phrase which almost synonymous to the APNU's campaign theme in 2011, A Good Life for All Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, in discussing my presentation, I will do so in a twofold category. Firstly, I will critically examine the Honorable Member's budget speech, subsequently narrowing my arguments to physical infrastructure for transformation, specifically addressing bridges and roads. Mr. Speaker, a brief examination of Volume 1 or Volume 2 of the estimates speaks directly to revenue and expenditure and program performance statements. The question to ask, sir, whether the returns received after expenditure truly reflects program performance statements. I ask this since each year when we are provided with these huge volumes, there is no major changes in the areas of objectives, strategies, impacts, and indicators. The only changes contained therein are in figures. Mr. Speaker, I would like to make a recommendation to the government or the Honorable Minister of Finance that there is urgent need for a review to be done in these areas to determine whether we are receiving desired outcomes. Mr. Speaker, I now turn my attention to the motion before this Honorable House and categorically state that the Honorable Member in his deliberations reported to this House and by extension to the citizens of this nation that in the previous financial year 2013, the government expended the sum of $11.3 billion to continue construction of the East Bank Demerara and East Coast Demerara 4-lane highway, inter alia. What is of major concern here, Mr. Speaker, is that the Minister has failed to identify the amount of monies expended thus far in areas alluded to above. On the roads, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister reported that the sum of $13.7 billion has been budgeted to improve roads and bridges, where $12.9 billion will go towards roads and $844.2 million for bridges, making a comparative analysis of what was actually budgeted and spent in 2013, since the sum of $12.6 billion was approved, where $11.2 billion went towards roads and $1.4 billion on bridges. The question to ask, is the proposed allocation for road works adequate? I can only guess the answer to be no. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, at 4.51 on page 33 of the honorable member's presentation, he reported that in 2014, there will be a financial feasibility study for the construction of a bypass road from Ogle to Eccles. The APNU welcomes this, since we believe that the time has come for the construction of new roads, which will aid in the reduction of heavy traffic that our people experiences on a daily basis while traveling on the East Coast and East Bank roads. Mr. Speaker, my thought on this, and I anticipate the honorable member would be in a position to provide the information on this. That is, Couldn't another area further on the east coast of Demerara be identified to conduct such a study? In the Honorable Minister's 2013, he made mention at point 4.44, page 27, that, and I quote, the completion of the designs and commencement of works on the Sheriff Street to Mandela Avenue roadway. Mr. Speaker, could the Honorable Member provide a status update, since there is no further reporting regarding works that was expected to be done in the Parika Ruby Magdam roads, etc. in 2013. The Honorable Member did not indicate the reason for the works not done. I do look forward to him providing an update. Mr. Speaker, fellow colleagues, I turn my attention to examine bridges and roads. These areas remain a major challenge for our people on a daily basis. In 2013, we saw and read of citizens taking actions into their own hands, that is, by way of protesting and blocking of roads in their respective communities, just to get the attention of the relevant authorities to address their problems. In paraphrasing what my fellow colleague, Honorable Member Mr. Harmon recorded at an APN News press conference on March 14, 2014, I quote, "We are of the view that public infrastructure must serve the people, and the people must be the center of it. And it's not that the people must serve the public infrastructure, which is currently happening." And I unquote. Mr. Speaker, I turn my attention to a photo taken in Sophia. As we said, infrastructure is supposed to be serving the people and not the people serving infrastructure. This picture tells it all, Mr. Speaker. The residents in Sophia, they are longing for the roads to be constructed. Right. While I was underground some weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, I witnessed residents paying $5,000 just to get their potholes filled in that community. The APN News view is that the only change to this is through local government elections. Hence our continuous call for this to be held by 1st of August 2014. Mr. Speaker, permit me to remind the Honorable House that the sum of $11.2 billion was spent in 2012 on roads, while for financial year 2013, a total of $11.3 billion was spent, giving a total of some $22.5 billion spent thus far for the past 2 years since the commencement of the 10th Parliament. Yet, there has been no significant improvement in the rehabilitating, reconstruction, and repairing of our roads. As my predecessors in the previous parliaments recorded the dissatisfaction and disgust in the approach government continues to handle infrastructure in this country. Mr. Speaker, we continue to see what is happening. That is the waste of taxpayers' monies on capital projects, such as the Marriott Specialty Hospital, Amila Hydro project, as our citizens continue to bemoan. Mr. Speaker, the audit reports laid before this Assembly speaks volume of the amount of irregularities, that is the overpayment to contractors inter alia. Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege of visiting Sophia, as I alluded to earlier. I empathize with those who reside in that community, whilst the residents voice their frustration on the state of their roads and challenges they face, especially when it rains. Most refer to the roads as the abortion roads. I would have illustrated earlier. In some cases, they are forced to pay extra in transportation costs.
That's right, that's right.
Mostly at nights. Another community that continues to be neglected by the administration, and there is no provision in this year's budget to address residents' concern, is the Cane Vale area, Mr. Speaker. On September, I'm quoting from Kaiser News, dated September 8, 2011. This is what one resident said. President Barrow Jagdeo, during a community meeting in 2004, challenged the residents there to hold the government to task, as 250 million has been earmarked to spend on drains and roads, electricity and water. Mr. Speaker, we are now in 2014, but in 2013, in 2013, another article carried by the very newspaper dated June 9th. This is what person said. This is what was told to persons. Persons who can afford transportation and self-help will be given crusher run, stones and tar to repair their streets. The focus will be on Cane Vale Diamond New Housing Scheme and Cinema Road. One resident, can I call her name, Mr. Speaker? Am I allowed to? Yes.
She's giving you permission to do that, though?
Pardon?
She gave you
Well,
permission.
I'm just quoting from the newspaper.
Oh, yeah, well,
actually.
go ahead.
Okay. One resident, Shariza Kumar, said that her husband's vehicle would frequently land in the huge potholes through her street and will end up in the workshop constantly. Now, Mr. Speaker, as I said, this is 2014. I can recall asking the honorable member, Mr. Robeson Ben, last year, when his ministry will do the repairs there in Caneville, and some promises were made. The people in Caneville, they're still awaiting to be relieved of their disgust. Recently, Mr. Speaker, the people there are of the view that the government continues to yield to their demands to ensuring that relief is given to them, that is good roads. Recently, we heard the outcries from residents in Vicelas, Better Hope and Pleasance, denouncing the state of the roads in their communities. And when this was done, Mr. Speaker, the residents of themselves would have made comparison with other streets in areas that are heavily supported by this government. Mr. Speaker, I represent the citizens in constituency 13, East-West Rumveld, including Riverview. An outreach was conducted in those areas, and it revealed that the community roads in East Rumveld are in reasonable conditions. In West Rumveld, a few roads are in reasonable condition. For the exception of Gillhouse Square, there, the residents reported that the road has been in that state for some time now, and whenever minor works are being done in the area, no attention is given. Just like other areas, Riverview has bad roads. Mr. Speaker, there should be a cessation in frequent road patching and pothole filling. In 21st century Guyana, as many of my comrades on the opposite side alluded to, the solution to road repairing is capping of the entire stretch. With this, our roadways would last longer and minimize wasteful spending. Right. Mr. Speaker, I turn my attention to bridges. The government is seeking an allocation of some 844.2 million towards the construction and rehabilitation. Under this head, the honorable member in his speech failed to itemize the amount expended on bridges in 2013. Rather, a single figure was given to cover both roads and bridges. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, the sum of $43 million was spent on the Maruka Bridge, To date, our brothers and sisters in that sub-region cannot use it as a result of the substandard works done. Regarding revetment works on the in the Kumaka area, an initial sum of $62 million was spent, and due to the substandard nature in work, the sum of $35.2 million was spent to redo the works, giving a total sum of $97.2 million. Mr. Speaker, I alluded to earlier that monies are wasted. In this case, we see wanton waste of taxpayers' money. A close examination of the estimates was done to ascertain the amount of bridges, including roads.
Honourable Member, you have 5 minutes within which to conclude.
Okay, to be done in financial year 2014, despite the information not being detailed. Nevertheless, a few areas have been identified. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Member, Dr. Westford, called on both sides to cooperate. Let me inform the Honourable Member of the common phrase, charity begins at home, and the government frequently boasts of being a caring government, a working class government, and a government for all. I ask, do they have the will and courage to practice what they preach? Therefore, Mr. Speaker, honourable members, in order to find common ground, to cooperate and move Guyana forward, as the budget team promulgate for 2014, we need to rise above party politics and act with maturity. My colleagues and I on this side of the House promise Guyanese a good life. Hence, the reason for the call by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition and Honourable Member, Mr. Kemraj Ramchutan, for the establishment of the Tripartite Committee in 2012. It was felt then that both the APNU and AFC sides were willing to cooperate with the executive branch of government in propelling Guyana to the theme for Budget 2014, a good Guyana for all Guyanese. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the government must devise a policy for proper operation of our roads, of our country's infrastructure, since it is noted with concerns that the following ministries are involved in infrastructure works: Ministry of Public Works, Ministry of Housing and Water, Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, and Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. We in the APNU have the experts and expertise in developing such a plan or policy. Recently, the APNU at one of its weekly press conferences called for the establishment of such. I trust that the government yields to this call. In summing up, Mr. Speaker, I want to echo the similar sentiments raised by my colleague, the Honourable Member, Mr. Bulkan, and to say to the Honourable Minister of Finance that a thorough scrutiny will be done on the estimates, and if there is no provision to bring relief to the residents of West Rumveld, Riverview, Sophia, Caneville, and others, he will have to go and come again. Since those people pay their fair shares in taxes and deserve proper roads and linking bridges in their communities. Mr. Speaker, the time for empty promises by this government is long overdue. There is need for immediate action now. Mr. Speaker, I conclude by referring to Budget 2014 as not a people-centered budget. I respectfully submit, sir. Thank you.